back to the One Soccer Nation podcast. I'm your host, Kareem Rae. Today's episode is a special one. We're officially welcoming our newest partner to the One Soccer Nation family, Laurel Springs School. For 35 years, Laurel Springs has been the gold standard in online private education. NCAA approved, accredited, serving students in all 50 states and over 70 countries. And they've quietly become the school of choice for elite students, athletes across professional soccer with education partnerships spanning MLS academies and clubs around the world. Joining me today are two people at the heart of it, Alyssa Tormala, head of school at Laurel Springs, and Jack Dempsey, who leads strategic partnerships and has spent 9 years building relationships across the soccer landscape. Alyssa, Jack, welcome to the show. Before we get into the partnership, let's start with the basics. Alyssa, for our audience hearing about Laurel Springs for the first time, what is Laurel Springs and who is it built for?
Oh, it's so great to be here, Kareem. Thank you for inviting us. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. Laurel Springs is an online K through 12 private school that operates both inside the United States in all 50 states and in over 100 countries around the world. We are a fully online, fully remote, and fully asynchronous program. So it provides 100% flexibility to our students who want to be able to follow their passions. And that's really at the heart of how we began 35 years ago and how we have continued to evolve over the past 35 years. Our goal is to give students the opportunity to do it all. Right? We don't want them to have to choose between being awesome at sports and being awesome at academics. We don't want them to have to choose between a passion for building a business and having a great college prep academic career where they can go on to a college of their choice. We're here to give them the opportunity for both of those pathways. So our goal is to be 100% flexible and work around the students so they don't have to work around school. And also to give them that truly human-centered touch where they get expert teachers, expert counselors, expert athletic counselors who help them with their college and career pathways. And they're not alone. And they get the opportunity also to have peer-to-peer contact. We have an amazing social community. And you wouldn't think you could do that online, but we can. We can lean into it. So there are just so many ways that we try to foster both excellent learning, excellent social community, and excellent opportunities for our students to follow their passions. Now, I could go on for ages about that, but that's sort of the nutshell of who we are.
Amazing. Thank you, Alyssa. Jack, you've been at Laurel Springs for 9 years on the partnerships and admission side. From where you sit, why does this partnership with One Soccer Nation make sense right now at this moment in North American soccer?
Well, in North American soccer specifically, I would say, and I think it goes back to our earliest conversations, Kareem, is that I would say in the past 5 years of our existence of Laurel Springs, out of the 35 years that we've existed, the last 5 years has really been the great surge in North America, where teams are kind of waking up to these opportunities compared to other sports like tennis and golf that we've had, massive partnerships and great success for 25 years, 10 years, 15 years. But North American soccer, especially with MLS Next and the Major League Soccer teams and every other league that we could get into, they're recognizing that with the rigorous demands of travel and training and really making that ask for buy-in to their programs, they really need to have a complementary system in place to where kids are educated, because often the decision to participate in these elite programs and next level opportunities, it really does, for parents, it hinges on the academics making sense without compromise for opportunities down the road. And so, all of the Major League Soccer teams that we partner with, and even internationally, there's this new mindset that's finally caught up in the past 5 years to say, look, we need to create a structure and a program for an immersion of the two. And so it's been working out beautifully. And I figured, no better place to have these discussions than One Soccer Nation. We love what you do and how you represent for not just the programs and soccer itself, but also for the youth. And you're an amazing advocate. And that's why we decided to partner.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Jack. We truly appreciate Laurel Springs and this partnership, and looking forward to building a long-term partnership with you guys. we're looking forward to connecting at the US Open, which is tennis. So excited for that. But most importantly, next month in September, Soccer X Miami at Inter Miami's new stadium will be there. Jack's going to be on stage with the club owners. We're going to be around true soccer people that are moving the needle in the beautiful game. So looking forward for us to connect there as well, and to have Marissa from Laurel Springs and share that space together, and connect with more soccer folks to continue the conversation that we're having now. And just to, get a quick glimpse, Jack, what do these conversations look like with these clubs that you guys partner with? And why is it something that they're interested in to collaborate with Laurel Springs on?
Well, for Major League Soccer, a lot of it comes down to reputation and branding, and they partner with us because they know they're going to get it done right the first time. And I think that that's a really big part. If you're the GM of a club, or, say investment groups behind a club, or coaches, it could be any role at the club. It really does come down to offering what is true and what you can vet and research thoroughly. Post-COVID, there's a lot of online schools that have popped up. Investment groups have started online schools because it was a trendy thing to do. But after 35 years, they all know that the historical outcomes with us are verifiable, fact-checked, and that every coach across America would look at a Laurel Springs transcript. Every university would look at a Laurel Springs transcript and see it as a parallel to a physical private school. And so that's what really matters. A lot of these clubs don't want to take a risk on something that's just trendy. They want to take an absolute leap into what they know is factual and authentic. And I'm honored to have been here for 9 years to represent the genuine article in the online space. And, I think that that's kind of the biggest thing, is when a major league club makes a partnership in this regard, they know that there's a reputation on the line to make sure that they get it right. So that's why it's worked out so well, and we support them, to the fullest.
Very nice. Jack, you're you're 1 year away from a decade. So a long time and a great time. Alyssa, coming to you, let's talk about the reality for serious young players between training, traveling, and matches. What does the traditional school calendar get wrong for high-level student athletes?
I love that question, because I used to live in that space, right? For many years of my career, I was a brick and mortar teacher and then a school leader. And I worked in schools that were college prep that had a lot of students just like the ones that we serve, just like the ones in these clubs, who were trying to be passionate and dedicated to their sports. And the problem that you run into in a traditional environment is just the very nature of the time and space limitations. You've got a school that is built around a schedule. It starts at a certain time of year, it ends at a certain time of year. It works on a bell schedule, so there are certain days and times the classes meet. Because of that, a great deal of the instruction that takes place is happening in those time and space restrictions. So if you're an athlete who needs to travel for a major competition, or if you need to do extra training with your coach that is interfering with those hours or days of school, now all of a sudden, not only are you missing school and having all of the stress of missing school and having to navigate that with your teachers and administrators, the school may or may not be as flexible with you. Some schools really try hard and others don't, but you're still dealing with the stress of that on top of the stress of training and competition. And then you have a whole ton of homework that you have to catch up on, or tests you need to take that you missed during that time. So it's not the fault of the schools that are working in these systems. They're wonderful schools. They really try hard to serve their students. I know that I was in that position as a school leader, trying to be as flexible as we could. But for a student who's really passionate about their sport and is, on the track to be a college or professional sports athlete, that just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. And so one of the things I absolutely love about the program that we offer is that school works around that student, and each individual student, no matter what sport or career they're in, it's still going to look a little bit different for them, right? Whether they're training in the mornings, training in the afternoons, traveling on the weekends, traveling during the week, different kinds of competitions, different seasons. They don't have to worry that they're missing school, arguing with teachers, arguing with administrators, having the potential of losing credit because they've missed too many classes, having to make up all this homework when they were gone for a week. They don't have to worry about that. And our athletes are under enough stress as it is. They are under enough physical and emotional and mental capacity as it is because it takes so much dedication. We don't want them to have to pull away from that, but we don't want them to lose out on college prep, awesome academics either. So for me, that is the beauty of what this program offers compared to what I used to live in and tried to support athletes in the past.
What I really like about your point is that you've experienced both sides. So it's not a biased point to online. You've experienced both brick and mortar and online. So and touching on the students, I mean, losing out on credits is not good. I mean, because then that backtracks that student. So
exactly.
Great point. Jack, you've told me stories about families hitting a breaking point, kids blowing through their excused absences by Christmas, stressed households, schools pushing back on travel, some points that Alyssa just touched on. Walk our audience through what that pressure cooker actually looks like for a soccer family.
Yeah, and I can give you the lens because I think at this point I've had my hand in some type of way in 3,000 unique student enrollments in 9 years, which is a crazy amount of activity if you think about that. I think it's one per working day. But basically what it comes down to, there's the pressure cooker that I've spoken to is exactly what you had mentioned. With the demands of the sport and with everything being asked in terms of the training, the reps, the travel, some students are competing internationally before they even have a driver license. Right. I mean, there's just so many factors there. And the stress on the family unit, I think, isn't talked about enough. Like we can all talk about, what teams need to do in the USA to compete internationally. And that's way over my head in terms of soccer knowledge and in training and the sport itself. But what I do know to be true is the pressure on the family to then do everything that's being asked of them at the next level. And you're absolutely spot on. And that's why we have what's called rolling enrollment, and we do mid-year enrollment as well, which is a thoughtful way to basically say, look, if you have maxed out your attendance threshold at your physical school because you just played and you trained and you traveled so much, and that school's now giving you grief, even though you have this rock star student that's highly ambitious, it doesn't mean that you don't have your third letter in the mailbox about, hey, you're pushing it now. You're past our attendance policy. Moms and dads are now going to urgent care to get notes. That's how bad it's getting. And I can tell you that because I've had hundreds of conversations with parents after having tears at the dinner table because you've got a student that's straight A's doing all the right things and it's just not enough, right? Like their efforts it's a total clash. You can't ask for everything for like a real go-getter as a student, a great human being as a student, and then penalize them for doing all of the right things athletically and academically. So we see that big surge in the middle of the school year where, they have 18 unapproved absences by January 1. And basically now they're going to get what's called SARB'd, which is potentially penalized financially, or you're going to start losing those credits and your grades are going to go in the tank. And especially in high school, it's high stakes poker at this point. Like, the NCAA eligibility matters, the college, everything you see on that transcript for grade 9 through 12, it really does matter. So we're here to make sure that we can create that lifestyle by the family's design and by the coach's design that they really, really need. And so it's an honor to do that. But those are the conversations that I've had countless hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, even non-soccer specific. It still resonates at the Olympic level for any sport, for tennis, for golf, for equestrian, for soccer. These are all universal truths in the modern day sports ecosystem.
Jack, can you give me some more context in regards to, the problem from brick and mortar schools is the policy of attached to absences. In regards to the solution that Laurel Springs provides, can you give some more context there and how is it more tailored to that specific athlete pushing to be the top athlete in their space?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the side of, public schools, for instance, they get paid by attendance. Average ADA is a real thing, average daily attendance, and that's how public schools get funded. And so basically that's why you cross that attendance threshold and it really matters to them. they might have all the empathy in the world and they love this kid and they want them to win. But frankly, there's just a lot of heat at the district level or state level or what have you. But and of course, to Alyssa's point, even if they're really ambitious, they're constantly in a state of keeping up. There's this kind of getting back from a tournament and panicking on a Sunday night to get all of your work done by Monday morning, which is really not healthy, leads to poor sleep, poor recovery, and just a really lousy family dynamic, right? I mean, and that's just real talk. That's just the way it is and what we see across all sports, but especially, the modern soccer ecosystem in the United States. It's too much for a kid to bear once they hit a certain level. And I will speak to like the two levels that we see, for student athletes in soccer. You have your bucket of the total rock stars in, MLS Next and all of these different, obviously club teams, travel teams, and whether it's domestic or, traveling international, you have your total rock stars and the writing's on the wall for even more, asking for even more out of them. And then you have I would call it a bucket of those that are emerging in the sport that really they want to take that leap into that next opportunity. But now, like I said, it's January 1. You've got 18 unexcused absences and everybody's suffering for it. And it's not fair to a child that's really getting after it.
Absolutely. Alyssa, switching gears here, let's get practical. What does a day in the life actually look like for a Laurel Springs student balancing high-level athletics with academics?
I love that question. And to your previous question as well, I think that's the hardest thing for families sometimes to wrap their minds around if they're coming from a more traditional brick and mortar type of schedule. The simple answer is it looks like what you want it to look like. And it looks different for each of our students even if they're in the same sport. So here's what happens. The content in our courses is accessible 24/7. All the student needs to have is a computer and access to the internet. So they're not having to attend a live class. They're not having to wait for a teacher to give them information. They can go into their course and work through their units and modules and information and assignments and projects step by step throughout that course. And they can go as quickly or as slowly as they themselves choose. And that may differ on the subject. You may have a student who's really passionate about math and is going to be able to plow through their math course a little bit more quickly, but maybe struggles a little bit with writing. So they're going to go a little bit more slowly. They're going to reach out to their teachers more often, meet with them, etc. But the student gets to pick their schedule. So they can do their work on the weekends. They can do their work in the evenings. They can do their work while they're on a plane traveling to a tournament. They can do their work when they are waiting around because they've got a break between training sessions. They can pick and choose how much and when they're going to do. And our system gives them a pacing guide in each of their classes so that they can track for themselves, how much work do I need to get done this week in order to stay on pace for my course? If I have a big tournament coming up next week, do I get ahead? Which we always recommend, right? You do a little bit more work the week before when you have some time, get ahead on your pacing guideline so you're not worried about any of those assignments that might technically be due the week that you're on a tournament. The awesome part too is that our pacing guide does not ding anybody. It's simply there as a guide. So if a student gets behind a little bit, no problem. They can catch up when they come back and they can catch up on their own time, again, around their schedule. So some examples of a day in the life. For many of our athletes, a lot of them train in the mornings. That is one of the things that they tend to do. So a lot of our athletes will get up in the morning, get ready for their training sessions, either be on campus already or go to their training sessions. They may work out with coaches. They may have team practices. They may be doing a variety of different physical activities in the morning. They take a break for lunch and they take some downtime to work on their coursework for a couple of hours in the afternoon. Some of our athletes love to attend clubs and activities as well. So they may find a spot for a club or activity and engage in one of those meetings if they have time. Then they may have afternoon training. A lot of our athletes often have individual training, or they're doing strength training, or they're doing workouts. So they may go do that in the afternoon, then come back, have family time, which is amazing, and go back to doing some of their work later in the evenings. We noticed just in general in education that a lot of our high school students, a lot of teenagers tend to like to do their work later in the day. That's just the nature of teenagers. And this is great then, because then they can set that up for themselves and work at the times that make the most sense for them. And again, if they can't do anything on a given day, they're not getting dinged. They're not being held, being absent from school. There's no attendance issue there. They're not being told, oh my gosh, now you have a whole bunch of homework on top of whatever you missed in class to make up for. They can go back and catch up on the weekends or when they have a couple of hours extra somewhere else. So a day in the life, the short answer, like I said, is it could look like anything depending on that student or family. It can also change from day to day, week to week, month to month, depending on what that student has going on for their training and competition schedule.
I'll add to that a little bit from the partnership side. What a lot of amazing academies have figured out is, let's say student arrives, at the facility or on campus or, in a designated learning area close to the campus with the coaches, with an academic lead that's kind of helping guide, the students that might be doing Laurel Springs on site, right? Or at the club. And so to Alyssa's point, if you talk about the immersion of athletics and academics, that training block can be pretty much whatever a coach needs. If it makes a lot of sense for them to do 2.5 hours of school in the morning after eating, and then they break away to do, 3 to 4 hours of training and then come back in the afternoon after grabbing another snack. And maybe it's time for strength and conditioning. Maybe it's time to go do drills, but if you look at an 8 or 9 hour day, there's absolutely no reason that you can't do an immersive day of 4.5 hours of training, right? Whether it's drills or scrimmaging or like whatever it might be for that club, whatever the coach is desiring. And then you have 4.5 hours of academics and it's perfectly suitable. You could break it up into half and half. You can do it every 2.5 hours, switch over to the next thing. There's some academies that'll do a 4.5 hour block where they have 15 students that are only doing academics for the first 4 hours of the day. And while they're doing their academics, they have a different squad that's out there training, right? And then they do the switcheroo in the afternoon, right? So all the kids that did school at Laurel Springs in the morning, they're now outside with the coaches doing practice and drills or whatever they need to do, strength and conditioning, etc. So you might have one cohort in the morning and then they switch with the cohort in the afternoon. And it's a highly successful model and it reduces the friction of, at the end of the day, what happens? Well, now you have more family time because you've conquered both. Now you can travel, now you can actually have a life as a student athlete and you can actually conquer both things. And if they have to log in at 7:30 p.m. to do a little Spanish, no harm, no foul, right? I mean, you're basically having that, like I always say, lifestyle by your own design, because that's really at its core what it's all about. If you want the best of all things, it really comes down to, kind of using the clock to your fullest advantage, and all that social time is still available to them because of that.
Jack, when we talk about partnerships for new clubs, let's say a coach from a MLS Next Pro or USL club is listening in right now, or any other league, and they're like, oh, this is very interesting. We want to potentially partner up with Laurel Springs. What's a frequently asked question that a club is interested to know?
Well, the biggest thing is, what do we have to dedicate to this endeavor? Like, what resources do we need as a club to pull this off? And so it ranges, because New York City Football Club might have something already established. They have a great program. The Red Bulls, they're amazing, right? They all have, their strengths and weaknesses as clubs. And, basically, you don't have to build out a high school campus at your training facility. Right. So that's the number one thing that people always ask, like, oh, do we have to have dedicated learning rooms and things of that nature? Sure, it's helpful. But, you could, if you don't have access to like have a auxiliary building or building out classroom environments, just partner locally with a quiet space. And you could do that within a few miles of the academy or where you train. And so, you just get creative and use those community resources to your fullest advantage. And that's what I always try to say is if you're emerging and getting there to where you can do dedicated, learning environments, in the meanwhile, partner locally with a good quiet space to get that done. You can still have it. You just have to get creative. Or, a lot of these Laurel Springs students, they frankly will just take advantage of being home until they're summoned to go to the field or to the academy, right? So, Laurel Springs has 40% student athletes. 60% of Laurel Springs would not be a student athlete. They're doing Laurel Springs remotely, internationally, or they're globally mobile families, or they're entrepreneurs, or ballet, or performing artists, or, whatever it is that they do. Maybe even just a highly academic student that, maybe their local offerings just weren't enough by the parent standards or the student standards. So 60% of Laurel Springs is, they're not training at a facility and doing Laurel Springs. They would just do it from home or wherever they might be. So if you don't have a dedicated space, it's perfectly fine. We've got thousands of students online that don't have that. But if you're a club that wants to start leaning towards creating that, we have a whole dedicated team and partnerships, that can give you best practices. They can give you references to those that are doing it at the highest level in all sports. We can connect you to other partners that maybe they've been doing this for 25 years, 10 years, 5 years, and they have a system that's rock solid with amazing college matriculation and amazing outcomes. So that's what a partnership is really for. We're the connectors of all things external and internal. And so anyone who's curious about how do we pull this off for our club? I mean, I can give you all the information and data regarding what we do, and Alyssa could certainly chime in on academics, but we're here to partner with you to kind of open and peel those layers of the onion back to make it easier and to reduce reducing friction on these concepts. It's what I do every day. So just a good conversation is in order for a lot of clubs. And I mean, every day it's another email from someone just being inquisitive is how do we pull this off over the next year or 2 years? And those will be fruitful partnerships, very shortly.
Absolutely. Let's do a little plug. For anyone trying to reach out to you, Jack, for partnerships, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to keep it, when you work in partnerships, you have to keep a LinkedIn tab open all day, because it's actually very, convenient, even though it's technically social media, it's actually very convenient for people in business just to say, hey, can we chat for a minute? All you have to do is send me a message, right? And I have to keep that tab open all day just to field questions. And so it's pretty awesome in that regard. And then you can also kind of see, what we're doing in partnerships, even on LinkedIn. The Laurel Springs website has a partnerships tab. And so you can scroll down and see all of the partnerships we have with Major League Soccer, but also other sports and performing arts and media. So it's really helpful to check out the partnerships tab on laurelsprings.com. And then, of course, you could just email me and ask questions, jdempsey at Laurel Springs.
Amazing. This question is for the both of you. Alyssa, what are the most common fears or stressors parents bring up when they're considering the move from a traditional classroom to an online learning space?
Great question. One of them, of course, is what does this actually look like, which we've talked about. What does that look like for my student to do their work? The second big one that parents often ask about is, what do I need to provide at home? What does this mean for me? And it is going to be different. And I want parents to walk into this with open eyes, right? Jack has talked a lot about partnerships. We think of partnerships in all levels. And so we look at ourselves as being partners with families as well, right? So our families at home are going to need to have a little bit more input. They're going to need to be working directly with their students. Their students will need their help and support in setting up, what does my daily schedule look like? What should it look like for me to get through my homework or my work over the course of a week? How do I navigate having conversations with teachers or counselors? A lot of students are a little bit, awkward or feel reluctant around that. That's part of the growing up process. It happens in every school. It doesn't matter what kind of educational experience you're in. But when a student is working from home, the parent is the first one, or the guardian is the first person to be able to help support that student. So when parents ask about that, I tell them, listen, you should think of yourself as a learning coach at home. You are that person who you're not teaching the student, but you're helping them figure out time management. You're helping them figure out what's a great way for me to work at home. Do I need a dedicated workspace? Do I need a space where I can have peace and quiet? Or am I the kind of kid that needs to be out in the middle of things because I can concentrate more when I have more background noise? Parents have to know their kid. They need to know them as a learner and get to know what is going to work best for them and then help foster that at home. So it's that sort of organizational, structural, how do I structure my day? How do I do my work in specific spaces? What does that look like for our family? The second piece that parents can really help with at home is supporting students in advocating for themselves and taking ownership of their own work. That is one of the great, deepest gifts that online learning can provide to students, is that high-level opportunity to become well-versed in the skills that we as adults use all the time. And that as they move on to college or career, they're going to be using all the time. How do I manage my daily life? How do I manage multiple responsibilities, especially for our high-level athletes? They're carrying a lot of different types of plates around with them all the time. The adults in their lives, whether it's the parents at home or the teachers and counselors on our end, can help them be guided in the right direction. So they're developing those skills step by step over time as they get older and take on more ownership as they, move into high school. And then by the time they hit college, one of the things our alumni come back and tell us all the time is, my gosh, I feel like I was able to do college like a breeze. Yes, the academics were harder. They're supposed to be. But I knew that I was supposed to go talk to my professor. I knew how to organize my day. I knew how to set up an advanced schedule for getting my projects done. I knew how to balance my athletics and the academics so that I wasn't overwhelmed. I knew what to do with that, whereas some of my classmates didn't, and they were really struggling. So for me, that's the biggest thing that comes back from parents if they're switching over is, how do I actually set my kid up for success? And that is where I would lean. Be the learning coach and partner with us at Laurel Springs, your teachers, your counselors, your staff members. We're here to help support. We just can't be physically in your house tapping the kid on the shoulder saying, hey, listen, it's time to get your assignment for math done, right? So it's that partnership and communication between parents and staff at Laurel Springs that is so beneficial.
Alyssa, another one for you. Some parents hear online school and worry about academic rigor. Talk to the strict parents listening right now. How does Laurel Springs maintain elite academic, AP courses, NCAA approved curriculum, college prep, while giving athletes their time back?
Love this question because it is a big myth that's out there that online school means it's, quote, easy. It's not, right? Online school, because it's designed to be online, there's a difference between what we do at Laurel Springs, which is well-designed, highly vetted curriculum that is designed for students to do in this kind of process. That's not the same thing as what students were doing during COVID with digital emergency learning. Totally different model. Laurel Springs has been developing our course load and our curriculum for years. And we have a huge positive relationship and reputation with colleges and universities. So we have 24 AP courses that students can take. We have the AP Capstone program, which a lot of traditional schools can't offer. They just don't have the time or space for it. That's a huge benefit to students. We have workshop programs. We have honors and AP courses across all of the high school and middle school career. We have 2 different universities that we partner with for dual enrollment purposes. So students have access to dual enrollment even while they're with us. And here's the catch. This is what I love about it. If a student wants to take multiple honors or multiple AP courses, they can. They don't have to worry that those courses are going to conflict in a schedule. So for example, back in my brick and mortar days, we often had conflicts between science classes. A student wanted to take AP biology and AP chemistry at the same time. Problem is, the same lab was being used for both of those courses. So they could not happen at the same time. And one or both of them conflicted with the student's other needed courses that they were trying to work toward. At Laurel Springs, you don't have to worry about that. There isn't a limit on space. There isn't a limit on the number of courses you can take in those spaces. So a student can really design a highly rigorous, highly college preparatory curriculum if that's what they're looking for, and it's not a problem. So we have the outcomes to prove it. We have thousands and thousands of students who've graduated from Laurel Springs. High percentages of our students are getting into their top choice college. High percentages of our students are getting into highly selective colleges, the Ivy Leagues, the MITs, the Juilliards, the schools that are highly selective. A good third of our class over the last 2 years has been getting into those schools. That's excellent, right? So it tells you that our curriculum absolutely gets students where they need to get from a rigorous college preparatory standpoint, if that's what the student is looking for.
Jack, do you have any stats you can pull up for the audience?
Yeah, I do actually. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, so this particular slide here, this is simply Laurel Springs class of 2025 outcomes. Every October, we're able to publish the class outcomes because of our rolling enrollment. Kids finish at different times of the year. But if you just look at the essence of things, 90% of students taking AP exams in 2025, earning a 3 or higher. Big topic for parents, $198,000 is the average scholarship awarded to the last 3 years of Laurel Springs graduates. That's massive, for families, and it's a great thing to highlight. To Alyssa's point, our counseling is very intimate. And so we can actually create this stat with authenticity because a student is meeting with their counselor throughout their academic journey multiple times throughout their high school career. And they start to create their interest lists. They want this and that and the other in ninth and 10th grade. Then they start to kind of narrow it down to their top 10 or top 5. And 86% accepted into at least one of their top 3 college choices. That's massive because basically we're playing our role in getting them to where they wish to be and where they want to be. And then of course you'll see the 7%, straight to professional athletics or professional career. And but basically what it comes down to is 460 unique colleges for just the class of 2025. I'm mentioning that because a lot of times when we speak to parents and families, we talk about the Ivy Leagues, we talk about the UCLAs and the Stanfords and the Pepperdines and the Princetons, and that might not be everyone's pathway. Of course, It's a great thing to highlight, all of the APs and honors courses, but we're a pathways oriented school. If they want to go to a college with say a Division II school with just a great business program, or, it could be, maybe they want to go to Michigan, maybe Notre Dame, or, it could be anywhere that you could possibly imagine, University of Central Florida, Miami. So we have a pathway for everyone, and 460 unique college acceptances in just one academic year should kind of show you the scope of what we're up to, and the reason it works out for not just one segmented group of academics, but for all students.
Nice. Alyssa, NCAA approved is a phrase that gets thrown around, but
Yes.
there are levels to this. Why does it matter that Laurel Springs is NCAA approved, and what should parents check before enrolling their athlete in any online school?
Great question.
Specifically for Laurel Springs.
I love it. Yes. So NCAA approved, what does that actually mean? Well, in order to be eligible for going on into college athletics, there are a lot of requirements that a student needs to be following, and those include academic requirements. One of the ways that we help solve for that is ensure that our courses have been pre-approved by the NCAA as being legitimate academic courses that can be used toward that student's college career, right? So it's not just getting into the college of their choice, but it's also that from a student athlete perspective, they qualify to be performing college athletics at that college. So being NCAA approved and making sure that those courses show up, not just on our curriculum and in our catalog, but also on the NCAA's catalog, that's huge. That means you can trust, and the NCAA can trust, that what we provide is going to get those students academically prepared for college and beyond. So that's huge. The second piece I would add to that is we don't want families to have to navigate that by themselves. It is complicated. It's one of the things that I think creates, to Jack's point earlier on, a huge amount of that stress load that families carry is around ensuring that their students are ready and they're eligible and they've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's in order to be able to move on to that next phase. So we have dedicated athletic counselors who are experts in this space. It's not just your regular school counselor that you have as a student. You have this additional counselor at Laurel Springs that works with college-bound athletes sits down with them, makes sure that they're on track, looks at their schedules, make sure they're taking the courses that are appropriate and NCAA approved for their purposes, and that they're graduating with no problem in their way to be able to proceed.
Kareem, I'll add one little thing to that, to what I see on the Major League Soccer partnership side, is that even prior to coming to Laurel Springs, or say even prior to partnering with us, whatever the student has done thus far, they might be missing a core requirement for NCAA eligibility. And so we have single course offerings. So you take a summer course with Laurel Springs, say for, an economics course or a geometry or something that might be missing as far as those core requirements from where they were prior to us. But they can come and take courses, almost like a la carte here as well, and the teams respect the fact that they might not have to be a full-time student of Laurel Springs, but through the partnership, if that student is happy at their current school and everything's working out, that's great. But if something's missing on their pathway to a particular university, maybe Duke is, kind of leaning towards 6 AP courses on a transcript, and, maybe their local school doesn't have AP psychology or AP macroeconomics or AP art history. We do. And so we see a lot of single course enrollments for really happy kids doing their thing. They maybe they'll be full-time at Laurel Springs, but through those partnerships, the coaches can say, hey, look, we're trying to get you somewhere here. Word on the streets is that you need a couple of extra courses here to jazz up that academic transcript. And they can come here as a part-time student. Maybe they just take one course a year, and we're happy to receive that student and give them the highest level of care, whether it's one course, full-time, summer, whatever it might be. A partnership isn't like this all-in proposition. So, whatever a student needs, we're here to back up and complement the organization to make it happen.
Alyssa, there's a myth out there that online school isn't real college prep. Laurel Springs is also approved by the UC system, offers 100 plus electives, including sports marketing, entrepreneurship, and digital citizenship, and parents with the New York Film Academy for broadcasting, journalism, and digital media courses. Can you speak to the academic rigor and how it compares to, and in some ways, exceed a traditional school?
I love that question because I've worked in college prep private education for my whole career, both in the brick and mortar environment and here at Laurel Springs. And I can unconditionally say that the quality of the college preparatory content, instruction, and preparation that we do at Laurel Springs is on par or above what most other traditional brick and mortar college prep schools can offer. And I think one of the big reasons for that is because students do have so much opportunity to choose between the various types of college prep courses that they would wish to take. And in my experience as an educator, it's often the student's own passion or willingness to lean in that is going to be a factor in their success in academics. So if they have only a limited type of course or a limited number of courses they can take in a traditional brick and mortar, and they take them because they want to be college prep and they want to be competitive, they're not always going to put their full effort and energy into the courses they don't really want to be in. But at Laurel Springs, we have so many options to choose from. You can take as many AP courses as you want, and you can take the ones you actually want to take that are actually going to benefit you going forward. Same thing with dual enrollment, same thing with honors courses. And like you said, over 100 electives to choose from. So they can really dive into their passions and get some experience in those spaces that they may wish to. One of the things I love also is that we are UC system approved, so University of California A through G system, which means students who are wanting to attend University of California schools know that those schools have put their stamp of approval on Laurel Springs courses. They're well accustomed to them. They know that Laurel Springs provides a great content and curriculum. They don't worry about their students coming to their very high-level academic programs because they know that we're preparing them for that. And that is true for the many other colleges, as Jack mentioned, the 460 unique colleges and universities. It's well over 500 over the last 4 years that have accepted our students, both in the United States and beyond. We have schools and universities across the world that take our students, and they trust that the academics they get at Laurel Springs are going to well prepare them for their academic careers beyond that. And our alumni come back and tell us that's absolutely 100% true. So to the extent that families are at all worried about that, I would say, fear not. We've got you. You can get a great college prep curriculum at many other private schools around the country, of course, and many of them are amazing. But so is Laurel Springs. We can do everything that they can do and more. And for me, that's what makes me really excited about what we do.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Okay, Jack, let's talk results. For parents listening in, where have Laurel Springs soccer alumni landed over the past few years? And actually, before you go, I'd like to mention that I'm aware of a few. There's Trinity Roman. She's at Washington Spirit and playing in the NWSL. We have Peter Molinari at New York FC and Kobe Henry at Real Salt Lake and MLS. I mean, these are the major leagues, right? Yeah. The list better than me, but what are some other students that are alumni?
Yeah, I could think of like professional pathway oriented students, and then also students that are at all of the colleges that Alyssa and I had basically talked about, like right this very moment, like real alumni of Laurel Springs. And anyone you could fact check by just going to the college website or to the professionals. But yeah, Trinity Rodman, certainly, superstar, very, highly popular for sure. She's amazing. We love her. Washington Spirit for sure. I think I could think of like Ethan Kohler playing for New England Revolution. Actually got accepted to Stanford, straight out of Laurel Springs, accepted to Stanford to play soccer, but chose to take the New England Revolution pathway. I can think of Jonathan Shore, New York City Football Club, Cole, Rwanda from Columbus Crew. Alexandra Pfeiffer plays for Bay FC. These are all professional soccer players right now, graduating, who graduated Laurel Springs. And then I think of, like Lucas Sarvas, who's playing at Harvard right now, literally at this very moment on the Harvard roster. Philip Pock from, University of Pennsylvania, currently, playing there. Trying to think, St. John's, Tyler Mork on the St. John's, actually just transferred to University of Akron. Another Stanford player, Astrid Wheeler, so it just never ends as far as the matriculations. Jordan Ryan's at Baylor University, playing soccer right now. Macy Lehrer is at MIT. Think of that. Matriculating to MIT from an online university. I think to myth bust, I don't think that a lot of parents, certainly, and sometimes coaches actually understand that we are actually getting students, that graduate Laurel Springs to these universities. UCLA and, Cal Davis and, just about everywhere you could, Northwesterns, Pearl Cecil's at the University of Virginia right now. Joe Arenas at University of Michigan. I have a list of hundreds, right? So it's hard to sit here and just kind of remember everything off the top of my head. But because we're a pathways-oriented school, we're going to check every box for college matriculation. And I think one of the things that you and I have talked about as well, Kareem, is that there's this kind of universe right now where parents are turning to, I would say, like Instagram influencers for NCAA information, right? And I was just on a baseball podcast the other day, and we were actually having a discussion about baseball and, how the one thing the host brought up to me was that, parents are kind of leaning in this modern culture of, social media, to these influencers who are, experts. And some of them are, and some of them are just really great at speaking, but they all talk to the, NCAA 16 core credits in 4 consecutive years and some of the fundamentals to this. But then they kind of talk about minimums too much. They talk about that NCAA minimum GPA of 2.4, right? But if you think that you're going to go play soccer at Princeton with a 2.4 and 16 core credits, you're sadly mistaken, right? That's not what Princeton as a university holds as a standard for their students, and every university has their own standards. So eligibility is one thing, but the college pathway with the academics has to complement the entire situation here. A coach can't advocate for you to go to that team, scholarship, full ride, partial, no scholarship, but even just acceptance to go play for that team. The universities have standards. So we're here to check the box for the standards of those particular pathways as to the direction a student wants to go. And that counts for international too. So, I think a lot of this comes down to discerning parents, making sure that they're fact checking and making sure that everything is completely legitimate in the eyes of the universities. That's why the MLS teams partner with us, and that's why, we'll have students even from Tovo in Barcelona and, all over the world. South Korea, there's soccer teams in South Korea that have students with us because they have a university pathway in the United States that they have ambitions for. Even in Bali, I mean, just everywhere you could imagine, we have partnerships where playing soccer at a U.S. university is a big deal to them.
Yeah, and it's really good for parents to know that students from Laurel Springs that have graduated are not only making it in the big leagues, but are also attending some major universities that you've mentioned, UCLA, Stanford. So truly the sky's the limit, not the limit.
And if anybody calls and they ask, I mean, this is information we have, right? On the partnership side, if anybody running a club, if they want to get into it and they want to really kind of talk about, where our alumni have gone, what we've done to complement the systems of others, I'm ready to go. I've got all that information. And I've also got the receipts for it too, if you need to fact check it. That's the superpower of Laurel Springs being here for 35 years is we're not here to just hype it up as this shiny new thing. This is year 35, so the outcomes across all sports, I just kind of have them in my back pocket, and it's all things that I have receipts for as well, which is helpful.
Amazing. I mean, those come in handy. I mean, sometimes
it's
people
important.
want you to pull it out.
Listen, I think one of the biggest problems that I see in youth sports today is people partner based on branding. Like you would think that, like some schools do a really great job of like branding themselves as a sports academic school. Okay. And they do a great job. They do a good job or an average job. I'm not sure. But in our lane, basically everything at Laurel Springs, we have the receipts for. So it's not just clever marketing. It's not just branding. If you go to laurelsprings.com, you're going to see a private school that operates online. And 40% of our school population are college-bound student athletes or pre-professional passion pursuits like, athletics or performing arts, etc. So we're here to actually be that piece of the puzzle for discerning parents and for organizations that really want to partner with reputation out front and just make sure that everyone's on the right side of history for these students. And, no one wants to partner and then 5 years later realize that, you partnered with something lackluster. We've got 35 years to back up everything.
Alyssa and Jack, this was fantastic. Thank you both for taking the time and for giving our audience a real look at what Laurel Springs is all about. For everyone listening, if you're a parent of a serious young player, a coach, or a club looking at what education can look like for your athletes, everything we talked about today is one click away. You'll find the Laurel Springs link in the episode description on every platform, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. That page was built specifically for the One Soccer Nation community. So start there. This is episode 1 of what's going to be a great run together. We got Laurel Springs soccer alumni, club partners, and some special guests coming your way in future episodes. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'm Kareem Rae. This has been the One Soccer Nation podcast, your gateway to the global soccer industry. We'll see you in the next one.